Where do we look if not to modern science to learn about love? Our keynote speaker this evening is a perfect person to help us explore this question. Not just because he's an Italian and who understands love better than Italians, and not just because of his long experience teaching the great books of Western civilization to college students, not just because he's been a fearless advocate of truth, especially in those places where truth-telling is most threatened, the modern university. And if the truth can't be told in a university setting, where is it safe? And not only because he brings the greatest resources of wit, irony, humor, and poetic insight to the defense of truth, with books like 10 Ways to Destroy the Imagination of Your Child. It is also the case that Dr. Esolen has translated two of the greatest and most influential books ever written on love: On the Nature of Things by Lucretius and The Divine Comedy by Dante. I've taught both of his translations in class. Both of these books, these two books, encapsulate, in many ways, the competing views of love that we face today. Notably, each of them situates love within a larger philosophical account of the whole, whether the reductive atomism of Lucretius or the erotic conversion and ascent of Dante to the complete good. So Lucretius begins on the nature of things in praise of sweet Venus, delight of gods and men, who under the wheeling signs of heaven rouse the ship-shouldering sea and fruitful earth and make them teem. It's really beautiful. But by book 4, Lucretius is singing a different tune. Lucretius advises human beings to not let those first sweet drops of Venus trickle into their hearts, to shun the chilling care of love and settle, he tells them, settle for mere sex. He endorses the hookup culture. Better to write off the old wounds with new business, stroll after a street-strolling trollop and cure yourself. Shift your thoughts to another while you can. The man who shuns love can still enjoy sex. More, for the goods come with no penalty. Dante reveals the deeper, richer complexities of human love. He shows that one cannot truly have the good of sex without love, and that the penalty of sex without love is the destruction of the integrity of the human person. This is, of course, illustrated in Canto 5 of Inferno, the famous story of Paolo and Francesca. This is a circle of the lustful, where, quote, what does circle 5 look like? That hellish cyclone that can never rest snatches the spirits up in its driving whirl, whisks them about, and beats and buffets them, flinging them here and there and up and down, nor were they ever comforted by hope. This whirling chaos of the lustful is not merely an external punishment. It powerfully expresses the interior disintegration which separates sex from love. But it's important to notice that Dante one-ups Lucretius by showing how a false picture of love can often be a mask for lust. Despite all the sexual propaganda, I think there's in fact little danger that humans will ever view sex as little more than a handshake or a pat on the back. Indeed, secular culture has a way of telling the truth in spite of itself. I'm thinking of characters from Sex and the City or Girls. They're not really happy, though they're living the life of the sexual revolution. But Paul and Francesca and Canto 5 are the consummate lovers in a certain way, and they fall into adultery through reading the great love story of Lancelot and Guinevere. What I want to conclude with here is Dr. Esolen's commentary on this passage, which I think best exemplifies who he is. This is what he writes. The Prince of Darkness, we are told, appears as an angel of light, a predictable strategy on the part of the Prince of Darkness. Yet there ought to remain some sooty tinge to that beauty, some Miltonic etching of fire upon the face, some hectic compulsion of the eye. Now here, in his treatment of lust, Dante could have contented himself with ugly brutality, with the rutting and snorting of our animal natures. A lesser poet would have made the all-lecherous Semiramis the queen of this canto. Instead, Our paradigmatic sinner is the courtly and lovely Francesca, and her sin has every worldly justification you can name. Her husband is crippled in body and soul. Her brother-in-law, the young Paulo, is noble and handsome. She and Paulo fall in love almost as in a dream, caught up in the fabulous beauty of the greatest of romances, the story of Lancelot and Guinevere. We are meant to respond to Francesca's beauty and to the beauty of her tragic love. That is true beauty indeed. But like Lucifer's, it is a beauty spoiled. And we can note in Francesca the traces of gracious manipulativeness and self-excuse. As the brightest and most glorious of the angels fell, so may fall those whose hearts should have been quickest to respond in sympathy with the words of the courtly evangelist John, God is love. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Anthony Esolen.
Thank you, Professor Schlueter, and thank you all. After that, I don't know why I should even be here. I should have introduced him instead. If you want, you can ask me about my time at Princeton here, way back. I'm about 50 years old. No. I was in this room as a freshman, in fact, in Introduction to Politics, which for some reason was numbered Politics 240. I have no idea what 201 was. Introduction to Politics, sitting about right there, listening to a professor named Fuad Ajami back in 1977. If you would like me to talk afterwards about what it was like to be here then with regard to these things we're talking about, I'd be most happy to do that. Well, the Lord God, we're told in the second chapter of Genesis. If there's anybody here from Harvard, Genesis is the first book of the Old Testament, which is the first part. I'm kidding. Second chapter of Genesis, Lord God has brought all the beasts of the field to Ha'adam, the man, the human being, and whatever Ha'adam called them, that would be its name. We remember that God in the beginning called the light day, and the darkness he called night. So when Adam names the beasts, we see in him a measure of divine authority proper to the creature whom God has made in his image and likeness. Now the Lord says, after Adam has named the creatures, it is not good for the man, Adam, to be alone. So he causes the beasts to come, but actually this is before, right? So he causes the beasts to come before Adam for naming. Maybe we're to imagine that they come before him 2 by 2, as in the account of Noah's Ark. The male is a fit companion for the female, but among the beasts and the birds, there was found no fit companion for Ha'adam, the man. So the Lord casts a sleep upon him. He removes a rib from his side, and he fashions woman from it. And when Adam wakes, he cries out in wonder and gratitude. Behold, this at last is bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, that is in Hebrew, Isha. For from her man, in Hebrew, Ish, she has been taken. That's man, adult man, Ish. Human being, generally speaking, Adam. For this reason, the author continues, a man shall leave his mother and father and cleave unto his wife, and they two shall be one flesh. That is the first time in Scripture that something is declared to be not good. Everything else has been tov, good. Mazel tov means good luck, right? Everything has been tov. The Lord saw the light that it was good, tov. God himself is good. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, says the psalmist. Hodula Adonai ki tov, tov. This is the first time something is declared to be lo tov, right? Not good. Everything else has been good. Heavens, earth, land, sea, sun, moon, stars, plants, animals, all, even cats, all good. And the whole, in one symphonic union, the first time in Scripture that this is used, is declared to be very good. But for Adam to be alone, that is not good. Now, if his lonesomeness were something that could be appeased by companionship, then God might have done something else. And now I'm thinking about the Sumerian Babylonian myths that the sacred author of Genesis is skewering at every chance he gets. God might have fashioned for Adam out of some dust or clay nearby the friend, the brother, such as the gods of Sumeria made for the youthful and arrogant Gilgamesh, king of Uruk. Then the foundational event for your civilization would not be the union of man and woman in marriage, but a fight between male and male, Gilgamesh and Enkidu, the companion that they have fashioned for him, a fight that threatens the very walls of Uruk, but that ends as the scraps of schoolboys used to do back when schoolboys used to fight, rather than have everything be settled by legal means. It ends in the closest of friendships. Any guys here, by the way, have a Gilgamesh experience when you were a kid, you got into a fist fight with some other kid and then became good friends? Yes, all right, it happens. We can imagine then and Adam and, Abel, doing something like what Gilgamesh and Enkidu did after they became fast friends. They journeyed north to slay the monstrous keeper of the cedar forests, the forest god Humbaba. Then they would, there they go, Adam and Abe, we can imagine, clearing paths, hewing trees, digging trenches, building walls, transforming the wild Garden of Eden into a fit habitation for princes, brothers in arms, ready to conquer, females tossed in as an afterthought. Then, if Adam and Abel sinned against God, or maybe they learned how to use fire, as in the Greek myth of Prometheus, who brought down to men that heaven-born gift, well, then God might have sent to man the same plague that Zeus visited upon man, a woman, like Pandora, all gifts. And she proves to be man's undoing when she opens a box that she was not supposed to touch, and out came strife and bloodshed and warfare and disease and despair and American elections. I was only going to say, there have been allusions to the election. Every time I try to watch a ball game, these obnoxious commercials come on, and especially in this season, it makes me think, for an election lasting more than 4 years, you ought to see your doctor immediately. That's what we have now. The fundamental social reality presented in Genesis is not the brotherhood. That's what you get in other places. But man and woman in marriage. The first words of Adam that are reported to us are his exclamation, "Behold," right? "Looky here." If Adam was from Tennessee, "Well, looky here. This at last is bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh," as if he'd been waiting for woman for half an eternity rather than half a day. Then the author follows with his first comment on why things are the way they are. It's his first authorial or editorial gloss. This is the reason why a man leaves one family to marry a woman to cleave unto her. Great word English, cleave. It's related to clay and gluten. It means you stick, right? And begin a new family, and they too are one flesh. That phrase is not predicated of any other creatures. From that commentary, we understand immediately that the union of man and woman, which is like that of the beasts in its orientation towards new life. Because remember, all the beasts have come before Adam, and they all have fit companions for one another, but Adam has no fit companion. So it's like that of the beasts in that it's oriented towards new life. but it also transcends that of the beasts. For those beasts, the cleaving unto is not necessary. The one flesh is a new thing in the world. It implies sexual complementarity, of course, and the congress of the sexes. That, by the way, is what sexual intercourse literally means. One sex over here, one sex over there, and as sexes, they come together. Gilgamesh and Enkidu are not and can never be one flesh. But it also implies a full union of human persons. And I want you to think about this. Maybe you can ask me a question afterwards about it, because I don't expound upon it too much here. But human persons are by their very nature time transcending. So if you have a union of human persons, that can never really be like that of a man and his harlot, or even his girlfriend, what Milton calls casual fruition, partaking of the transience of a male and female dog in an alley. They may be stuck together for a time, stuck with one another, but they do not cleave unto. Now, the author of Genesis did not intend to say anything controversial here, except that he is poking a finger at the Babylonians. We have to wait for Jesus to draw out, I think, its full implications. Jesus says, referring to divorce, referring back to that scene before the fall of Adam and Eve, for this reason a man shall leave his mother and father and cleave unto his wife, and they two shall be one flesh. Then he says, therefore, what God has joined together, let no man put asunder. So too, St. Paul did not intend to say anything controversial. What Jesus said is controversial. What the author of Genesis says, not. St. Paul was not trying to be controversial when he bade wives submit to their husbands as to the Lord, and husbands to love their wives. And here comes something that's somewhat controversial, a powerful challenge to love them as Christ loved the church. We may assume that when objects of common sense and common observation are controversial, madness has come upon the land. So in the Soviet Union, madness had come upon the land, and it was dangerous for you to bless yourself in public. In the modern university, it is dangerous for you to repeat the farmer's Thomistic objection to sodomy, that don't go there. And I ask you to consider this. What Professor Schlueter said made me think how terrible it is that you really do feel that you are more at liberty to speak your mind about any topic under the sun at a bar with a bunch of construction workers around than at a university. Far more free at the bar than at a university. Anyway, in a sane time, people tell tales of men and women that are sane, even if the tales are compromised by the usual human limitations, by sin and error and bleary vision and spiritual earwax. But in an insane time, a mad time, the tales that come naturally to ordinary people are either stifled or bent. So you get nowadays decadent Western equivalents of, let's see, stories from mad times in the past. Soviet boy who falls in love with his tractor. Or blonde Hitler beasts stripped to the waist and pledging together their pure Aryan manhood for das Vaterland. These are mad times, with the madness magnified by the immense power of suggestion, wielded by mass phenomena such as the world has never known, mass media, mass education, and mass entertainment, almost all of it toxic and inimical, both to the natural vision of man and woman that Genesis takes for granted, and to the supernatural vision that Genesis holds forth for our admiration and acceptance. Now, a part of the remedy, I'm going to suggest to you that I've come to realize, after all, that this is not going to be anywhere near sufficient. But a part of the remedy is to reject the poison by refusing to watch the soft, sleazy porn that the major networks peddle, or the grosser and more viscid stuff hawked for adults, which is to say adulterers or the spiritually adulterated. Now, I used to believe in this regard, as in most others, nature will take over. Young people would be like the man whom Chesterton described as having suffered a diet that made him ill because it was full of poison. Chesterton said, "You need not come up with a complete and healthy diet to replace the old one. The main thing is to get rid of that old one, and anything the man ate was going to do him good. Big Macs and Twinkies would be better, right, than rat poison Alfredo. A boy who grows pale and rickety because he's shut up indoors all day long does not need an exercise program. He needs to be let outside." So I had thought, if we just reject the poison, the nature will do most of the good work we need to do for us. I'm afraid that it's not enough now. Not enough to decline the strychnine or aconite. Marriage is something that does happen naturally, but it also is not something that happens naturally. The attraction between male and female, sure, that natural, that should be natural, though we've done our best to blunt it or pervert it, twist it. But marriage, I think now, must be the implicit object of many years of a child's upbringing and education. It must now be on our minds because we do not live in a healthy time. A boy who does not look at porn may have a healthy view of girls, but he will still not know how to talk to them when he is attracted to them. Have we ever known how to talk to them when we were attracted to them? Do you like to play chess? I don't know. or when he is older, how to court them, or what he needs to do to make himself the sort of man that a woman can happily and confidently marry. The whole techne of sexual innocence, technology, so to speak, the skills of sexual innocence, lively courtship, and marriage, that techne has largely been lost. You might as well ask him to build his own house, which men used to do, after all. My grandfather did. He hardly knows which end of the hammer to strike with. And I've been told this by students who say, "Well, why don't you ask a girl on a date?" What's a date? What do I do? So how do we bring up husbands to be and wives to be? I'm going to give you 3, possibly 4 suggestions here, okay? 4 recommendations. The first order of business I might call sex education. And I mean by the phrase exactly what the words imply. What we have in our schools now is rather training in how to use erogenous tissue in order to procure pleasure. You got that? Training in how to use erogenous tissue in order to procure pleasure without being burdened with a venereal disease, or worse, from their point of view, a child. Such training, which you pay dearly for through your taxes, variations whereof you can find advertised on the cover of Cosmopolitan or Men's Health. It's not be Men's Health, it should be physically adult males' health. Such training is not worthy to be described by either word, sex or education. It has nothing to do with being a man or being a woman. And it has nothing to do with the flourishing of that embodied intellectual person made in the image of God. It has nothing to do with the sexes as such, nor is it educative of a human being. I'm going to give you another name to call it. We ought to call it instead pornopedia. That's what it is. It's pornopedia. Instruction in the tricks that whores and whoremasters employ. Anything that teenagers need to learn about the mechanics of sexual intercourse can be imparted in a day or two, supposing that they do not live on a farm already. But being a man, or being a woman, we never do come to an end of learning about those unfathomably beautiful things. No, we must, without apology or hesitation, recover in our minds a strong sense of the goodness of boyhood and the goodness of girlhood, not think ourselves sophisticated or superior to other mortals for signing our daughter up for pee-wee football or sprinkling our son's hair with sparkles. Think, after all, of what sexual attraction really must be. What moves a boy or ties his tongue in knots when he sees a pretty girl? It is not the sight of the organs, they are clothed. It is the girlish person. It's a way of being that's not his, that has something to offer him precisely as the boyish person he is. It is his incipient awareness that she is for him and he is for her. I am not describing friendship. Friendship is, married people here? No, I'm not describing friendship. I'm not describing friendship. Friendship is a different thing. Friendship is based upon what 2 or 3 or 10 people have in common. You think of 2 boys leaning against a car they've been working on, talking and laughing, facing the same direction, looking not into one another's eyes, but aslant at one another, and out at the world they're ready to take on. You see it all the time. That's what they look like. Hey, Joe, look at that. Hey, Fred, yeah. That's what they do. The boy and girl do look into the eyes, or if they're too shy to do that, they steal a glance at the hands. Well, they're all ears for the music of that other kind of voice, the voice that is so different from their own voice, the voice of the boy, the voice of the girl. We are blessed with innumerable stories that take this attraction for granted, that in a bad time such as ours can help children, and maybe even us, learn about the sexes. Very often this learning happens, as it were, by the way. It's more powerful that way, I think. It is not the direct intention of the author. It's taken for granted. So consider Frances Hodgson Burnett's wonderful novel, The Secret Garden. Anybody read that when you were a kid? It's a really good movie, too. Not enough. Not enough have read. Novel is set in the moors of Yorkshire. Features an orphan girl named Mary Lennox, a lad named Dickon, that's a double diminutive of Richard, hence we get the name Dickens and Dickinson. Dickon leads the essential life of a boy outdoors, in sunshine and rain, learning the ways of wild things and making friends of the beasts. And there is a bedridden boy named Colin, who makes the lives of his keepers a perfect hell, screaming and crying when he does not immediately get what he wants. Colin's father, a widower, has retreated into silence and neglect. He spends almost all of his time in London. A portrait of the mother, as a beautiful young woman, hangs behind a curtain in Colin's room. She died by a freak accident in a walled garden that she loved well. So the father has kept that garden locked, and as far as he knows, it has remained untended ever since. Now, the maiden and the youths in the secret garden are just this side of full sexual awakening. So their play, and they haven't gone to public school, so they don't know about these things, thank God. Their play is still childlike. But we see their play also in the context of the love of man and woman, and of the loss that Colin suffers because he has never known his mother and hardly knows his bereaving father. We see it also in the context of nature itself. But there's another character in the novel, it's a character without a name, a character that situates the natural attraction of boy and girl in the healthy garden of nature. He's a robin redbreast. Now, our robins in the United States are not the robin redbreast over there. The robin redbreast over there is a kind of sparrow, I believe. Our robins are thrushes. So these are different colored creatures and kind of fancier. He's brave, this fellow. He's nearly tame. He lives in that enclosed garden. It says the old gardener pointing him out to marry for the first time. I'm just going to do this in Tennessee because I don't know what they sound like in Yorkshire. He came out of the egg there. If he's courting, he's making up to some young madam of a robin that lives among the old rose trees there. Sure enough, the robin is always courting, or practicing at courting. When Mary tells the gardener that the robin has made friends with her, he says, oh, that's just like him, making up to the women folk just for vanity and flightiness. There's nothing he wouldn't do for the sake of showing off and flitting his tail feathers. He's as full of pride as an egg's full of meat. Mr. Robin does indeed find in the book Mrs. Robin. He builds her a nest, and he brings food to her as she tends the mysterious and all-important eggs. It's this robin whose chance settling upon a hole to dig for a worm leads Mary's eye to see lying in the earth an old, rusty key. It's the key to the secret garden. So we see the same kind of jaunty and healthy masculinity you see in Mr. Robin in the boy Dickon when Mary meets him for the first time. One day she is skipping rope out near the woods when she hears a low, peculiar whistling sound. So think like the song of a bird. She wants to find out what it is. So it was a very strange thing indeed. She quite caught her breath as she stepped to look at it. A boy was sitting under a tree with his back against it, playing on a rough wooden pipe. He was a funny-looking boy, about 12. He looked very clean, and his nose turned up, and his cheeks were as red as poppies. And never had Mistress Mary seen such round and such blue eyes in any boy's face. Of course, she knows the secret garden, she got the key. We know that Mary is going to share her secret with this boy, Dickon. How could she not do that? When they enter the secret garden, he inspects the bushes and the trees, for he was very strong and clever with his knife. Evidently, he didn't go to public school, right? And he knew how to cut the dry and dead wood away. He could tell when an unpromising bough or twig still had green life in it. He also sees that Mary has been busy in the garden. Thou hast done a lot of work for such a little wench, he said, looking her over. I'm growing fatter, said Mary, and I'm growing stronger. I always used to be tired. When I dig, I'm not tired at all. I like to smell the earth when it's turned up. Ah, it's rare good for thee, he said, nodding his head wisely. How's that for flirting? They don't even know that they're flirting. So they spend the afternoon there, Dickon running about and naming the flowers, barely poking their shoots here and there above the turf. He gives them breathing space. He loosens the earth with his trowel. It's just the sort of thing that Mr. and Mrs. Robin do, and he and Mary love it. There's a lot of work to do here, he said once, looking about quite exultantly. Will you come again and help me do it? Mary begged. I'm sure I can help, too. I can dig and pull up weeds. Do whatever you tell me. Oh, do come, Dickon. I'll come every day if thou wants me, rain or shine, he answered stoutly. It's the best fun I ever had in my life, shut in here and waking up a garden. If you'll come, said Mary, if you'll help me to make it alive, I don't know what I'll do, she ended helplessly. What could you do for a boy like that? I'll tell you what thou do, said Dickon with his happy grin. Thou get fat, and thou get as hungry as a young fox, and thou learn how to talk to the robin, same as I do. Hey, we'll have a lot of fun. Boy and girl are falling in love, and they don't know it. They may not know it for years to come. This love is an even more secret garden than the one they behold. And Burnett does not disturb its blooming with commentary, much less with sexual innuendo, leaching into the watershed like battery acid. But that love is wholly natural, as are the habits of their friend the robin. Without that garden of still, tender love, like the small shoots of a crocus, or what Dickon calls a daffy-down-dilly, poking their way upward into the sunlight. If it were not for that love, the crippled Colin would never be healed, nor would his father ever set aside his self-destructive grief for the wife he has lost. We should surround our children with such stories. My gosh, I think maybe we should surround ourselves with them too, just as we should give them fresh air and good food to eat. They need those stories now. They're not going to get them from anywhere else. They need to walk home from school with Tom Sawyer and Becky Thatcher. They need to travel in time with Meg and Cal. They need to play on the pebbled shore and walk along the jetties with Master Davy and little Emily. We should be teaching them to waltz long before they really know what the heck the dance is all about. They should have dancing bred in the bone. But there's more, and here I come to the second order of business. We must raise children with the clear and straightforward expectation that boys and girls grow up and marry one another and have children. It's common sense. It is therefore the prime end or aim of their sexual upbringing. They will marry and have children. The prime end of their sexual upbringing, that is their upbringing as boy, as girl, and the chief secondary aim of their education. That part of their education, that aim for their education has been entirely lost. Let me take you to another place. There's another story. The scene is Quebec, along the shores of the Lac Saint-Jean. That's a good 100 miles north of the St. Lawrence River. We're with the hardy sons and daughters of France who wrung a living from those wooded lands. The soil was rich, but the summers so cruelly short. The house belongs to the family Esolen, and they are entertaining a visitor from fancy Boston. He's a French-Canadian who has left that hard life behind and settled in Boston. Now, he has fallen in love with the girl who gives the name to this novel, Maria Chapdelaine. He's fallen in love with her. She's the woman of the house now that her mother has died. She's hardly more than a girl, but she must see to the younger children, do all the washing and the cleaning and the cooking, tend the kitchen garden, milk the cows, see to the chickens, sometimes go out and help with the lighter tasks in the fields, weeding, gleaning, winnowing, tasks that would make any of us ache for a week. Her whole being is oriented towards becoming the wife of a farmer. She is a wise and sweet and pious, very shy young lady. She's also profoundly sad because the man to whom she had pledged her heart died the last winter while he was returning to the Lac Saint-Jean from the far north. He was caught in a snowstorm and he lost his bearings in that immense wilderness. Now, if individual fulfillment were the rule of life, if we are not made to be gifts to one another, if other people, other bodies, are rather the means for our procuring pleasure or wealth or power, if that's true, then there would be nothing to hold Maria to this place. It's beautiful, but it's punishing. The suitor from Boston says as much. This is his pitch. Let's do somebody from Boston, I don't know, Christopher Walken. This is no place for you, Maria. The country's too rough, the work too hard, barely earning one's bread. It's killing toil. In a factory over there, clever and strong as you are, you'd be in the way of making nearly as much as I do. No need of that if you were my wife. I earn enough for both of us. We should have every comfort. Good clothes to wear, a pretty flat and a brick house with gas and hot water, and all sorts of contrivances you never heard of to save you labor and worry every moment of the day. And don't let the idea enter your head that all the people are English. I know many Canadian families who work as I do, or even keep shops. There's a splendid church with a Canadian priest as curé, Monsieur Tremblay from Saint-Hyacinthe. Your son. You'd never be lonesome, never. It's really tempting to Maria. Notice that life in Boston involves the severing of ties. Your work in the home has nothing to do with your work in the factory. Your work in the factory is merely for the accumulation of money, and money in this man's vision is not primarily for the family either, but for shopping and for labor-saving devices. Maria has spent her life learning things that in Boston would be of no use. She would bring to the marriage her beauty and her sweet personality, but not her hands, not her work. Now, in the meantime, another suitor comes to call. He's a farm boy named Eutrope. He's not nearly so good-looking as the man from Boston, and he has nothing delightful to offer. Here is his pitch. It's true enough that I'm not rich, but I have 2 lots of my own, paid for, out and out, and you know the soil is good. I shall work on it all spring. Take the stumps out of the large field below the ridge of rock, put up some fences. By May, there will be a fine big field ready for seeding. I shall sow 130 bushels, Maria, 130 bushels of wheat, barley, oats, without reckoning an acre of mixed grain for the cattle, all the seed, best seed grain. I'm going to buy at Roberval, settling for it on the spot. I have the money put aside. I shall pay cash, without running into debt to a soul. And if only we have an average season, there will be a fine crop to harvest. By the way, they never do have an average season. It's always tough. Just think of it, Maria, 130 bushels of good seed in first-rate land. And in the summer before the haymaking, then again before the harvest, will be the best chance for building a nice, tight, warm little house, all of tamarack. I have the wood ready, cut and piled behind my barn. My brother will help me. Eutrope loves her dearly, but he's too shy to speak of her beauty. What he has going for him is all that he will do for her, for their lives together as man and wife. He longs to give himself utterly. I know well enough that we shall have to work hard at first, Eutrope went on. But you have courage, Maria, and are well used to labor. As I am, I have always worked hard. No one can say that I was ever lazy. And if only you will marry me, it will be my joy to toil like an ox. It will be my joy to toil like an ox. I don't know if a phrase like that has been breathed by a man in the last 30 years. I can imagine her saying, oh, well, that's quite fortunate because I had every intention. My joy to toil like an ox all the day long to make a thriving place of it, so that we shall be in comfort before old age comes upon us. I do not touch drink, Maria. I love you. His voice quavered, and he put out his hand toward the latch to take hers, or perhaps to hinder her from opening the door and leaving him without his answer. My affection for you, of that I am not able to speak. Never a word did she utter in reply. Once more a young man was telling his love, was placing in her hands all he had to give, and once more she could but hearken in mute embarrassment, only saved from awkwardness by her immobility and silence. Marriage, we see here, is not something that you choose alongside the rest of your life. It is not an accessory like a hat or a purse. It is, for the great majority of people, the very heart of our earthly years. Maria must choose between one suitor and another, which means also a choice between one kind of marriage and another. In Boston, the marriage will be like playing house. And the point of life is not marriage exactly, but the play. On the Lac Saint-Jean, there is no house to play, but a home to build and keep. And the point of the marriage is the family life that Maria and Eutrope will share. In Boston, marriage is something in your life. On the Lac Saint-Jean, marriage is the heart that brings life to your life. In the end, should I do a spoiler here? Yeah, why not? Maria makes the right choice, a choice that accepts the suffering and welcomes life. Of course, we want to surround our young people with these stories too. Maria Chapdelaine is not a novel, perhaps, that would move the heart of an 11-year-old boy. He got married, but it is a story for youth, and it is a paragon of sanity and health. We might add other favorite stories of young love blossoming into marriage: Pride and Prejudice, Emma, The The Betrothed, one of the 5 or 6 greatest novels ever written, The Betrothed. But we need to understand that the ultimate aim is not simply to read these works and be edified by them, but to bring up young people who understand what it might be like to be Maria or Elizabeth Bennet or Mr. Darcy or Renzo, who themselves aspire to be like those pure young women and young men. In other words, we want to raise up young people for marriage, people who could speak like the farmer Eutrope and reply like the farmer's daughter Maria, and people who have the family to come in mind even before there is a family at all. We should not raise the instrument to the status of the end. Everyone asks the child, what do you want to be when you grow up? And they mean by it not being, but doing, and often doing for the sake of doing. Or for the prestige of doing it, the power or the wealth to be gained as ends in themselves. Nobody asks the kid, what kind of family do you want to have when you grow up? What kind of girl or boy would you like to marry? If we ask those questions, we might get around to asking what we plan to do to make that marriage and that family a reality. Okay? What we plan to do now. Now, I said that there would be 3 or 4 orders of business, and I see that from by the time that I'm going to go right away to my final consideration. All right? You can ask me what I would have said. Because I am going to assume that you will agree with me that for the sake of argument, it is not a controversial point to say that man and woman are made in the image and likeness of God. Therefore, marriage is not, it cannot ever simply be about fun, about enjoying yourselves and having a pleasant life together. Ultimately, it must also be about the sanctification of the spouses themselves, an orientation of marriage to eternity. Okay. There is much to say about this. I will give you a couple of bits of poetry here. One of my favorite poets of all time, the poet I was introduced to by Professor Thomas Patrick Roach, Jr. at Princeton University, in a room like this many years ago, Edmund Spenser. Spenser was unique among the sonnet-writing lovers in the Middle Ages and the Renaissance. His beloved actually said, "Yes, I'll marry you." Everyone else was married already, or they said, "I don't want anything to do with you." She said yes, and he wrote his sonnet sequence, the Amoretti, as a tribute to her, a gift to her. It's part of a big wedding gift to her. And it tells sometimes in comic form, comic and self-ironic form, that is, he's poking fun at himself, the story of their courtship. And very oftentimes she's putting him at a distance. He's frustrated. She finally agrees, "I will marry you." Okay? Now, there are 89 sonnets in this sequence of sonnets, and in the middle of the 89, and right in the middle, there is a 47 sonnet block that begins with an allusion to Ash Wednesday and ends the 47th sonnet on what it would exactly be 40 days of Lent. Sundays don't count as Lenten days, but however you count it, 40 days of Lent plus Holy Week, or 40 days of Lent plus Sundays, it becomes 47th day, which will be Easter Sunday. The whole context of their love, okay, the love of man and woman, to be consummated in marriage, the marriage that is to come because she has said yes, that is set in the context of divine love. Not as an extra thing, but as the very heart of human love. So, in a sonnet sequence, a love sonnet sequence, we get this very unique poem, sonnet number 68, which would correspond exactly to Easter Sunday. "Most glorious Lord of life, that on this day didst make thy triumph over death and sin, and having harrowed hell, didst bring away captivity, thence captive, us to win. This joyous day, dear Lord, with joy begin. And grant that we, for whom thou didst die, being with thy dear blood clean washed from sin, may live forever in felicity. And that thy love we, weighing worthily, may love thee likewise for the same again. And for thy love, that all like deer didst buy, with love may one another entertain. So let us love, dear love, like as we ought. Love is the lesson which the Lord us taught. Will they get that in school, I wonder? That the ultimate end of marriage is the holiness of the spouses. Not just their completion as physical beings, but their completion, their integrity, as Professor Schleter has suggested to us, as spiritual beings. Their union with one another, their union with God. Spencer certainly has that in mind. After he has ended his Amoretti sequence, he throws in a couple of Cupid poems, and then comes the most magnificent wedding poem in the history of wedding poems, called the Epithalamion. There are 24 stanzas to it. Don't ask me about the mathematical structure of it, because I'll take another hour to describe. Basically, let us say that each stanza corresponds to an hour of the day, the wedding day, that they're celebrating. Spencer said, I picked the worst day in the year to get married on because it was the summer solstice. Let this one day, when will this long, weary day have end? And lend me leave to come unto my love. How slowly do the hours their numbers spend. It's right. But however long the day is, it's going to come to an end at last. And it does come to an end. And when it comes to an end, we move into the night stanzas. And Spencer is allegorically calling upon the heavenly bodies to shed influence upon him and his wife Elizabeth and their bed, to make that bed holy and to bring up from their union a great progeny. Okay? I welcome in that heavenly influence. There's nothing, they just say, please, let's not have a kid yet. We haven't gone to the Bahamas yet. It's shed your influence upon us so that we can raise a brood, a goodly brood of blessed saints for to increase the count. Not just a brood of descendants, but a brood of blessed saints. That ends stanza 23. And the incomplete, partial, deliberately partial, broken, stanza 24. Don't ask me why it's broken, because you don't want me to take so long. Simply this. He apologizes to her because he wanted to give her an even better wedding present. But he's only able to give her the greatest, the sweetest love sonnet sequence in the history of such, and the greatest wedding poem ever written. But he wanted something better. He says, song made in lieu of many ornaments with which her bridal bed should have been decked, with which cutting off through hasty accidents you would not stay your due time to expect, yet promise both to recompense. Be unto her, so song, be unto her a goodly ornament, and for short time an endless monument. They say that these poems come from the Dark Ages and they have nothing to teach us. They have a great lot to teach us. Anyway, I'm done here. Thank you for your attention. Yes, you may clap if you wish. It's been a rough day for me. It's been a rough day for me. So I'm very cheered by your faces and your appreciation. So now I am going to take questions from the audience, and you can ask me about my time at Princeton if you like. I sat right over there.
These two gentlemen have microphones, so just wait until the microphone gets to you before you ask the question. So pick up on the recording mic you have until 9:30. So Dr. Russ,
Okay.
run the show here.
There are There's Anne's way back there. There's way back there.
Hey.
Hey,
Okay.
are you a Princeton person?
What? Say it again?
You're from Princeton?
Not originally, but now I am.
Oh, okay.
I'm from Texas originally.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So in this culture, you're saying that guys and girls don't know how to respond to each other?
It's
Right.
not in an innocent and wholesome way, and
So-
sometimes hardly at all.
Right. So
Yeah.
like counterculturally, I feel like a lot of guys struggle. Not my husband. He's awesome. Like
You
never
guys are
struggled
married?
with this.
What you do, get married when you're 13?
Yeah, we got married really young, but on my line. Anyway, so most guys and a lot of my girlfriends complain about guys and their fear of asking girls out and how to ask a girl properly out and how
Right.
to pursue a woman.
Right.
So are there courses?
My God.
Are there
This is
places
how bad we
for
got.
guys to
I mean,
go?
it's like having to take courses in how to play.
Right.
Little children don't know how to play outside. They have to
Right.
have after-school courses.
So, but it's not a woman's job to be like, hey, listen, like, this is how you pursue me, because, like, it's a guy's job to hunt a woman. So,
Yes, well, I think that this is something that we have to, unfortunately, right? I mean, this is like, what we're doing here is teaching people, let's say that you have people who have been in leg braces, like Colin in A Secret Garden, who've been in leg braces for years, right? They don't know how to walk, okay? Now, normally these things happen by nature, but it's not going to happen by nature, okay? So you have to teach kids to walk. I don't think that 18 is the right time for it. I think that the right time for it this should be preparing already when the kid is 7 or 8 years old. I mean, you have dances for the boys and girls, okay? You get the boy used to asking a girl for something, right? What about now?
yeah.
You know what I've always thought would be a good idea, okay? And I don't know if anybody actually has done this anyplace, but what you do is, let's say that you have your, basically you have a whole bunch of young men and young women who have the same ideas about sex, marriage, family, and so forth, right? So we're pretty much all on the same page. But they have no idea what to do, okay? And they really don't know who to ask, how to ask. And girls often overestimate the boldness of boys, okay? And I mean, guys can be risk takers when it comes to hanging from a rope over the edge of a cliff. That's nothing compared to asking a girl, okay, whether she wants to go to a movie with you. That's nothing. I would rather jump from a 60-foot high cliff into water of ambiguous depth, right? Then ask a girl, when I was 16, 17, then ask a girl, do you want to go bowling? It's terrifying, okay? So I thought that it might be a decent idea, you could do it here at Princeton, to put, you ready for this? To put names in a hat, or 2 hats, boy hat, girl hat, okay? And you pick one from this hat, and you pick one from that hat. And those 2 are going to go out on a date, okay? And then you have a flow chart. You have a set of instructions, okay? You're the girl, this is what you're going to do. This is what you're going to wear. You're the boy, this is what you're going to wear. This is what you're going to do, okay? And we spell it all out for you, okay? Like the instructions that come with the simplest of mechanical devices these days, right? Take the screw. The screw is the thing with the threads, and turn it clockwise in order to fasten. Just to get people started, because the default position is loneliness now. I don't call it the sexual revolution. When I want to make a powerful point, I call it the lonely revolution, because it has produced a lot of loneliness. A lot of loneliness, and very little innocent fun, my gosh. I have students who are 20, 21 years old, and they've never had any fun. I mean, unless you're in the hookup thing in which you're having fun, but it's diseased fun and it's not fun at all. There's not a lot of delight out there. There's not a lot of mirth, okay? Well, so maybe to recover this, we have to have the dating equivalent of first you take your right foot, you put it forward, right? But it will not happen if you just recommend it to people. I think you got to set it up to force people to do it, right? So you're all in this, everybody's committed, okay? Names in a hat here, names in a hat there, doesn't matter. So the pressure, gee, who am I going to ask? If I ask her, I really like her, but I know she's going to say no. Maybe I should ask her, that'll be my Tufts instead of Harvard or Yale or Princeton. It's how guys think, you know. Sorry. Anybody here from Tufts? You guys know what I'm talking about. But so there's and maybe there are people who just by chance will become really good friends. I recommend that. Okay, but you gotta start somewhere. I think youth groups. I know there's a lot. A lot of places, a lot of churches around the country have theology on tap, and it frustrates the heck out of me because guys and girls together should not be talking about theology. I mean, there's something in my Italian nature that rebels. I mean, isn't there something more interesting that you can think of than talk about theology? I love talking about theology. I talk about theology all the time, but I mean, it's just, I wouldn't call it full of mirth. I think that if people had talked theology always, we would not be here right now, you know? Cro-Magnon man would have gotten theology, and that would have been the end of it. And maybe racists to come would wonder, what killed them? Was it the plague? Was it Ice Age? No, they had gotten theology on tap. I'm teasing, of course, but you know what I mean. It's time for those same places to say, let's forget the theology for the moment, okay? We got to get these kids together doing things that are innocent and wholesome and fun, all right? So that they can learn how to enjoy the bumptiousness of the male over there and the grace and sweetness and delightfulness and sprightliness of the girl over there. They can have fun again. My gosh, I think the Amish are not puzzled about this one. Why should anybody be puzzled about it? It's a mark of the ridiculousness of our times. Anyway, that's a great question. So now maybe if some of you do this in the coming months and a marriage comes from it, please do write to me and send me your picture, because I'm going to put that. I have pictures of all kinds of big families from my old students all over my shelves, as some of my students back there can tell. And I will put yours there too. This I was a part of. I feel like a yenta, right? Okay, more questions. There's a question right there.
Thank you so much for your talk.
You're most welcome.
I was wondering, so I've been raised in a very traditional home, and yet I think for a lot of girls, the way that we've been talking about boy and girl, they're just things that we don't identify necessarily with the stereotypical girlishness. So maybe grace or delightfulness just has not been part of my personality, and I may identify more with some of the playfulness that boys have, or these kinds of areas.
You were a tomboy.
Not completely, but...
Boys love tomboys, by the way.
So I'm just wondering how we can then think about these concepts, even if we accept all the assumptions that there is an essential difference between boys and girls and ways they should behave.
The more stories you surround yourself with, right, the greater the variety of ways of being feminine there will be presented to you. I mean, look at Shakespeare, okay? Shakespeare is the greatest creator of female characters in the history of literature. But they're all over the map, okay? And we recognize, whenever we meet one, we recognize, yes, that's a woman. That's the quintessential girl. She's totally different from that quintessential girl, okay? We're so impoverished. We've been taught that anything that you say about boys and girls is a stereotype, and therefore to be derided or sneered at, rejected. That's stupid. Think about, I suggest to you, think about, in our own literature, think about the enormous variety of manifestations of the feminine, okay? Look, Rosalind is a very sprightly girl, and she is in control of the play as you like it. She's very different from the tart-tongued and rather ferocious woman, but also very sweet but fierce Imogen in Cymbeline. And as for Miranda, what can you even begin to say? Think more multifariously, perhaps, okay? And try to remember that what we used to inherit from the past, both from common sense, traditional ideas about men and women, and from our literature, from our art, was a lot richer than the slanderers of that have said, okay? And that goes for both sexes. More questions? Yes?
Dr. Esolen, thank you.
You're welcome.
What would have been your fourth suggestion? The one that you admitted.
Well, yeah, it was going to be my third suggestion because it was going to lead up to obviously the sanctification of the spouses, that is, the one helping to sanctify the other. That's got to be, I imagine, the highest aim of Christian marriage, Jewish marriage. Muslim marriage, I don't know enough about Islam to say, but maybe it goes across the religions, I'm not sure. The third one was going to suggest, when you are raising your kids, that you not only raise them with the matter-of-fact expectation that boys fall in love with girls, and not only try to bring them up thinking always, ultimately, at least the secondary aim of my education is going to be for marriage and the family, okay? But then, all right, what do I bring as a male or as a female, as man or as a woman, in the marriage itself to the spouse, okay? Now, this again is something that's a matter of course for everybody but us. Everybody but us thinks, okay, you got this boy here. We know that he's ultimately going to get married. He's going to be a father. He's going to have a family. What do we have to teach him so that he can do things when he's married that help his wife and his kids? And I'm not there talking about the employment that he undertakes for a salary. I'm talking about all the things that people used to do for themselves, right? Does he know how to hammer a nail straight? Can he lay pipe? Can he build stuff? Or does that all have to be hired? Does he know how to use a shovel? What can he do? Okay? What are the ordinary daily or maybe weekly or maybe yearly skills that he has to bring precisely as a man into this marriage? Now, some of it, these things will overlap, right? I mean, you needn't say, well, I'm not going to learn how to cook at all. That doesn't make any sense. But in point of fact, okay, I've been married now for, let's see, the Cardinals win the World Series in '85. I'm going to have my 30th anniversary coming up in December. And I learned pretty early on in the marriage that my father was not handy, and I learned nothing from my father when it came to that. I had to learn pretty quick, okay? And now I'm pretty handy, okay? I can do a lot of things. There are things that I've done over the years, around the house, under the house, on the barn, under the barn, that require more than half of my physical strength. sometimes my physical strength to its utmost. All of those things that fall into that category of requiring half of my physical strength or more, these are things that my wife would not be able to do, nor would I expect her to. I wouldn't want her to do that. But I can now bring these things to her. I'm actually a good painter. Now, that's something, of course, that women could do too, but it's kind of grueling work to be a painter. Painting ceilings is not fun. We have bought a house in Cape Breton, and it's a big old house, and we're finishing it ourselves. And I've said to her, and every ceiling downstairs, this fancy old house bought for like 2 bits. You come up with a design, and I'll paint the design. I don't know how I'll do it, but I'll figure out a way to do it. Whatever design you want on the ceiling, I'll execute. Okay. Now, if life were up to men alone, if men didn't do things for women, men would be living under bridges. Okay. In fact, there's part of me, I think there's part of every man that secretly would like to try out living under a bridge. And certainly every man alive has a secret desire to live in a tree, okay? My wife has many skills that she brings to me that I don't have, or if I could acquire them, maybe I couldn't, but if I could, I wouldn't. I would never get around to it. I don't feel like it, right? I mean, she probably, and she has the skill to do it, she probably does more things for me and the kids and for people in the neighborhood in a week than I will do in a year, right? Now, so you're raising a kid. I say you're raising kids 10, 11 years old, and you say, well, eventually this kid is going to be married, right? Well, will that kid be able to do anything in that marriage? That was the third point. The third point was all about practicality. Now, see, I know that everybody has an allergic reaction to this because according to doctrine from on high, from the Kremlins of our day, you are supposed to divide every chore evenly right down the line, okay? It's because that's fair. But it's crazy. I mean, imagine dividing the food down the line, right? Sorry, you brushed your teeth twice today. That's it for you. You only get to pet the back end of the dog. I get the front end. It doesn't matter. That is a completely insane way of viewing the things that people do in a marriage. And in fact, I think it's probably healthier for the marriage if there are some tasks that are done only by one spouse or the other. I know, again, that I'm speaking heresy, but the people who say I'm a heretic, they're all insane, and they're on their third divorce, ducky. So you're in love and you're going to stay together forever, eh? I thought so too when I was here. Well, if it was a person like you, I'm not surprised that you got divorced. If there is this, in part, a healthy and natural division of labor, then each spouse learns to regard the work of the other spouse as a gift, okay? What I do around the house for my wife, I would never do for myself. I would never do. I don't paint the ceiling. What do I want to paint the ceiling for? No. But I do for her. And she does for me things that she would not do for herself. She makes me an apple pie. She doesn't like apple pie. She makes me a blueberry pie. She don't like blueberry pie. She does these things for me. And so as things have gone on, we've gone from, in the early part of our marriage, being able to do very little, actually, but doing it kind of all in common, to being able to do quite a lot, and then there's almost no overlap. So I'm entirely dependent upon her, and she's entirely dependent upon me. And so everything is a gift. Every day there are gifts. and not lawyerly divisions, if you know what I mean. I saw a hand, yes there, ma'am.
Well, first, my now husband, when he was asking me on a date for the first time, I did have a strong request that he read Dietrich Bonhoeffer's Cost of Discipleship.
That I would read.
That he read Dietrich Bonhoeffer's Cost of Discipleship.
That I would read it.
No. My now husband.
Your now husband.
Before we went on our first date, I required that he read Dietrich Bonhoeffer.
Oh, you made him read Dietrich Bonhoeffer. The Cost of Discipleship.
And we've been married for 8 months.
What's your husband's name?
Cleve. He's not here.
Did you say Cleve?
Yeah, so I leaved and cleaved. I did.
And so you said to him, just so that you know what you're getting into, I want to prepare you for the martyrdom to come.
It's not for everybody, but we had a lot of theological conversations.
Oh, I see what you mean, I see. So theology actually brought you together. While these other people were dancing and eating banana splits, you were talking about
Right.
Dietrich Bonhoeffer.
Yes.
You are not Italian. Are you German by chance?
A little
Are you-
bit. He's
Sind Sie
not.
Deutsch? Are you
No.
German?
Am I German?
Yes.
A little bit.
Well, that must.
Anyway.
Hey, whatever works. But that's not your question.
No.
Okay.
But I had to say that. My question is, you talk about the importance of sharing stories
Yes.
with our children
Yes.
and the younger generation
Yes.
to instill a design for the purpose of marriage between man and a woman.
Right.
My question is, I see a lot of women having grown up with those stories, whether that be good stories like reading Jane Austen, Pride and Prejudice, or whether that be watching Disney movies. There's this form of entitlement that girls see, oh, my Prince Charming. And I think that there's a lot of that even in Pride and Prejudice with I'm
Really?
waiting for my Mr. Darcy. And so my question is, what is the balance between teaching stories and sharing good stories, but not teaching young girls that they're fulfilled with marriage and that the all-end purpose of life, I could be wrong, isn't to be married, because some people are not called to be married. And so
I think that rather few people are not called to be married, though. Some people are not called to be married. I think that they are rather few. The great majority of people are called to be married, I think, and to have families. I think there are some people, but they're fewer than we might suppose, for whom, besides union with God, besides the worship of God, something else other than marriage and family is the prime end of life. I'm hesitant to predicate that of more than a few, okay? I would say that it is not true of me. That's a tricky question there. But now, one thing I can answer pretty readily is that we can get rid of the junk, okay? Disney is junk. The stories that I'm talking about are not junk, and they do present marriage as a challenge, a commitment, a sacrifice of oneself, a total self-giving. There's almost a kind of conversion that has to occur in the Jane Austen novels before the people get married. There really is a change of heart that occurs. They give up their pride, like Mr. Darcy, give up her prejudice, like Elizabeth Bennet, give up trying to think that she's the center of the whole world and controlling everybody else's life. If you're Emma, if you're Mr. Knightley, you have to stop thinking of yourself as merely a kind of father figure for Emma. Every character in the Jane Austen novel has to undergo a conversion before marriage. Now, if that's the sort of thing that we're giving to our young people, then I think it's entirely healthy, right? And then I don't think that we run the danger of any kind of Hallmark card vision of, I'm a girl, so I'm going to get married, and that's going to be it. That's going to be it. That's going to be, you're going to have a life of hard work and sacrifice and love, because if you're talking about love and you're not talking about sacrifice, then you're not talking about love. I suggest to you the book that I've mentioned here, which is almost unknown now. I mean, it used to be universally read in Canada, but Canada has abandoned the heritage of English literature even more fully than the United States has, in my experience. The book is called Maria Chapdelaine. It's got a funny spelling, C-H-A-P, so Chap, Delaine, D-E-L-A-I-N-E. It's a splendid, splendid novel. You could read it in a couple of hours. I think there's much wisdom there in visions of what marriage is all about, and stardust ideals, not ideals, but sort of, I want to say fairy tale nonsense, but that's an injustice to fairy tales. So let's just say Disney nonsense, not to be found, okay? More questions. I see a question right here. How come the guys aren't asking questions here? Because they're afraid. I know you did. We should give him a bottle of wine or something. Yes.
Thank you for your talk and all the wisdom you've shared with us. But my question is less romantic than the ones before. But I'm a history major, and I'm really interested in what you said at the beginning about learning about political philosophy in the 70s at Princeton. And you seem really eager to talk
about political
philosophy in Princeton at the 70s.
in Princeton.
When you had
Yeah.
Fuad Ajami in here.
When I had Fuad Ajami in here.
Yes.
Oh, you want to know about what it was like at Princeton? Not necessarily about political philosophy. He didn't really teach political philosophy. He taught. It was mainly focused on Vietnam and the Middle East. He was a very fine teacher. He just died recently, too. Princeton canned him, though he was popular with students. Princeton had the attitude back then, I don't know if it's still the case now, that if you were a really good teacher, there must be something wrong with you. And they got rid of people that way. You were suspicious if you were really liked by the students. Anyway, you were suspect. At Princeton then, I came to Princeton when the sexual revolution was in full swing, from a place where not that long before, maybe 15 years before, it was the matter-of-course expectation that just about every woman, and many men too, perhaps even if you were Catholic, a majority of men, would go to the altar not having had sexual intercourse before. That is, they would have kept their chastity intact. That was all, that was like a levee that had been smashed in by a flood. I came to Princeton, and one of the first memories I had that fall was being herded up with a bunch of other kids from my entryway, which was entryway 2 in 1901 Hall, across from Henry Hall down there. I walked right past my room coming to campus today. We were herded up with a bunch of other students to talk about sex. Now, this was part of freshman orientation. And what the Princeton people were interested in this regard, I'm not sure. So we talked about sex and what was the right thing to do and the wrong thing to do. And this is 1977, and by then, there was no longer any right thing to do or wrong thing to do. The kids, I remember, at least concluded upon this, that meaningless, impersonal, mechanical sex was wrong, okay? When an 18-year-old guy who looked like he was 35, he was burly and bearded, and he looked like he'd come out of a bad Hollywood hippie movie, said, "I just don't see that at all. I think there's nothing wrong with mechanical sex. I think it's cool. As long as both parties agree to it, what's the big deal? I think it's great." And the moderator of the group some dean of student affairs or other, did not have an answer. And there was embarrassed silence there. That was the status of moral thinking, I think, at Princeton at the time. When it came to sex, there was no real right and wrong at all. Although you could be a jerk, I suppose, but there was nothing. So it was dark time, and even then, as early as then, guys did not ask girls on dates. We didn't have the mechanical metaphor hookup, but there was no dating. Because you see, everybody took for granted, and this was what made dating, so to speak, almost impossible. So it ended up being very lonely because you never ask any girl out, because you understand, according to the rules of the game, that if the guy asks the girl out, bed is next, like next time or now. And the stakes are, well, first of all, that's just wrong, and the stakes are incredibly high. So it never happened at all. I'm sure there are plenty of people who were intensely lonely because of that. I was intensely lonely. So I remember Princeton as a dark place. And there was no group like this, okay? I mean, the Aquinas Institute was there, but they were kind of gloomy. I never, they were. I never did anything with them. In many ways, I lucked out. I lucked into Professor Roach's classes, where I learned for the first time that there was somebody named St. Augustine and somebody named Boethius, and that there was this whole great, long Christian heritage of literature before me that I had never had any idea existed, and changed my life. But if it weren't for that, there were 2 Shakespeare classes on offer that semester. I happened to pick Roach's. If I had picked the other one, I might not be here. I might not even be alive, I don't know. Any more questions? Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Sam. Hopefully, like all the guys here, I'm striving to be a gentleman, so thank you for your talk. I think
You're
that's
welcome.
important. Are
you an undergraduate?
No. I'm the long-bearded hippie you just talked about. So.
Okay. So you're much better looking than a hippie was. I have, unfortunately, an indelible image of the hippie with the cool mechanical sex in my mind. I'll never be able to get it out.
Well, I hope I might just have nightmares now. Thank you. So, no, actually, my question has a little bit to do with dating. So, how do we counter online dating, which in reality is probably not dating at all? And we were talking about how do we counter hookup culture? Back in your day, you didn't have that. Now people slyly can swipe right and hook up. So, how do we counter that, especially for a younger generation that seems to be such an obsession right now?
When you say online dating, you mean that you...
Online dating, for example, there's online websites. There's, for example, you might even go with eHarmony all the way to Tinder.
So you get in contact with somebody online, and then you have a date with that person.
Well, I think, I know good people that do online dating, and I don't think they're bad people for doing online dating, but I definitely don't think that there is courtship with online dating. In fact, they almost... Whether it's for meeting, it's simply to meet and then possibly to have sex afterwards. But there is no courtship, I don't think, in online dating. And it seems to be an obsession nowadays just because it's so easy to do it. It's so easy to make a quick profile and then just see what you can land. So that's something that the new technology and new culture and postmodernism is bringing to the table, which I think we should somewhat talk about.
The suspicious thing about this is that everybody who does such a thing is essentially put in the position of a salesman, right? This is what I look like. This is how much money I make. These are my hobbies, and then what you're looking for is somebody whose characteristics appeal to you, but not somebody to whom you can give what you have to give. I have to think about this more fully. How about all of you who attend churches or synagogues to say to your priests, ministers, rabbis, it's long overdue. You guys must now be in the business of matchmaking, okay? You must do these. You must sponsor dances. You must sponsor bowling nights, basketball, volleyball, and picnic. You must do these things. You must recover these. I know that churches were not principally in the business of providing innocent entertainment for young people. But since there is no such anymore, the churches have to step in, okay? And then what you can have are a bunch of young people in one place doing something fun. And maybe then they can forget themselves for a little bit. Because, you know, when you're playing volleyball and you're really getting into it, you forget yourself. And forgetting yourself may be the prelude to forgetting your embarrassment and just enjoying somebody else's company, somebody of the other sex. They've got to start. They've got to start. I say that wherever I go, to whatever church I go, wherever I speak. So it's fine that we get the theology of marriage correct and chastity, but I want to see some more marriages out there, okay? And not just people who believe the right thing, okay? Are we done?